Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of this edition of Men at Arms. This is Remleiz from 40k Theories.
And this is Fiaura. How's everybody doing?
And we're going to carry on with this edition of the Ecclesiarchy by moving on to Adeptus Sororitas Pattern Power Armor. Now, unlike the Ignitus Pattern Power Armor that we covered in part 1, this one uses the same power source as Astartes Power Armor and will effectively last forever if properly maintained and undamaged. Now, one thing that surprises me about the Sisters of Battle is that the Sisters of Battle Power Armor does have a helmet, but they're only issued a helmet after they prove themselves worthy of wearing it, which doesn't really seem practical in a battlefield situation. But at the same time, it's standard power armor, albeit a much smaller and lighter version of it because it is meant for normal humans. And again, due to the lack of a black carapace, Sisters of Battle can't benefit from the same strength advantages that Astartes can have.
So, I went over some of this in the first episode. Because of the lack of a direct neural interface, this is an exosuit. We're going to check out all the details about what exosuits are and how they work on the first episode. However, I'm going to point out that the armorer I talked to literally looked at me and said, wait. They don't get issued a helmet until they've proven they're worthy of it? I went, yeah. He went, that's stupid. That is sheer stupidity.
You may call it stupidity, some people call it fanaticism, some people call it a test of faith.
That's one hell of a test of faith, considering the most common way to die from battlefield injury is to be shot in the head. However, that much said, again, the lack of fully neural interface could only improve the user's strength between 20 and 30%, depending upon the individual user's bone density as well as their individual muscular strength. Every Sister of Battle probably does 4 to 6 hours of muscle training and cardio every day to be able to operate their power armor. So that the power armor doesn't actually break their body. More importantly, the lack of a helmet obviously gives other issues, such as the lack of full spectrum filtering and buffering between yourself and deadly gases that get expunged upon the battlefield.
The only benefit I can see of not having a helmet is that at least you're going to have full vision. You're not going to have any obscure peripheral vision or anything like that.
Correct. Helmets, regardless of design, often do interfere with the vision of the user in exchange for protection, which is a constant battle being fought by armorers versus soldiers, and that is the ability to actually see everything around you while still protecting your face. The power armor, while it does provide significant protection in this case, it does not, again, have any mention of impact compensation for the user. This means when they punch a target with 20 to 30% extra strength, their fist is going to feel the force of the impact. When they take a mace to the chest, while their chest isn't actually going to suffer any physical damage to skin tissue or muscle, the force of the impact is going to transfer into their body and possibly into their internal organs. Simply put, the armor would only be as effective as the enemy is unwilling to use blunt force trauma to concuss you to death.
Essentially, it'll protect you from getting cut open with bullets and blades, but it won't protect you from getting your bones broken from being cast fist.
Yep. So, cast fist often. They die quickly.
So, moving on to one of the trademark weapons of the Sororitas, we're going to turn things up a notch with the Flamer. Now, Flamers unleash a liquid incendiary chemical, usually promethium, which is similar to napalm as it actually sticks to the target and continues to burn of its own accord. These things also come in pistol form, hand flamers, which are normally wielded in pairs by the Sisters of Battle Seraphim squads. It's a flamethrower. Let's be honest, it is a flamethrower that shoots napalm.
Now, I have discovered a slight issue with the 40k version of the Flamer versus the version of the flamethrower that we have today, or even the ones we have in World War II standards. So there are two types of flamers for a start. There is one that looks like a cloudburst that fires out a burning gas that's highly pressurized. The range on such a device is about 28 meters, or 1/4 the length of a football field. Yes, the American kind of football. However,
Handek.
Liquid jets fire an incredibly dense, flammable liquid that does not evaporate while on fire, such as napalm. These generally actually have a range of around 70 meters. The Warhammer 40k version only has a range of 30 meters. I don't understand why. But apparently, flamer range got cut in half by the Sisters of Battle for some reason. In practical arms terms, this is a massive downgrade in even today's technology. I am vastly surprised at this because of something we're going to get to shortly, and that's the melt-a-gun. So, I would like an answer on that one. Now, the hand flamer is actually not only practical, but I held one!
What? How'd you get a hand flamer?
Apparently, there were a couple of unique versions of these that date back all the way to Vietnam, in which a pistol was converted to a flamethrower. Simply by changing out the magazine and firing mechanism to instead have a small pressurized tank attached to it, while at the same time having a second tank of napalm as the clip. I saw jury-rigged versions of these that were Colt 45s, and I even saw an actual production model that was never put into service. Hand flamer is an actual thing. I was surprised by this. But it turns out it's not only an actual thing, it will literally shoot napalm about 65 meters away from the user. It's basically a supercharged airsoft gun or super soaker loaded with napalm.
Now imagine them being dual-wielded. Just get that image in your head. You get set on fire, you get set on fire, everyone gets set on fire!
No. I have the flamer guy from Team Fortress 2 now imagined in my head running through a field of daisies, spraying rainbows everywhere. And now the bolt gun with a crossbow.
Yes, the Condemner pattern bolt gun. Now, there are a lot of bolt guns that actually are combi weapons, as in it's half bolt gun, half another weapon. The most common of which is actually the Storm Bolter, which is essentially just two bolt guns taped together. You can get variations, bolt gun, bolt gun, plasma gun, etc. The Condemner is a bolt gun crossbow that fires a silver stake engraved with sigils that destabilize a psyker's connection with the wall. Now, the impact of the stake against the psyker will not only cause a major wound, it will also cause his power to go out of control, destroying the psyker in a storm of psychic energy.
Okay, for a start, making someone kill themselves with their own weapons, that's awesome. Second, why the hell is this silver? Are they werewolves now?
Well, there are vampires in 40k.
Now again, I've already gone over the problems with the concept of a bolter and how the warping of the bullet naturally leaving the barrel is going to cause it to not quite fly straight. However, adding a combi stake crossbow is interesting as hell. I'm not sure why you would not just integrate this stake into bolt ammunition and fire it that way if bolters work. However, using a non-chemical propellant underslung crossbow is not only unique, it's going to require an incredibly large amount of extra training time, because the user is going to have to get the difference between when they fire their bolter and when they fire the crossbow. Since crossbows have completely different ballistic characteristics than bullets. They are much more drastically affected by wind, They have an incredibly short 100-meter range in comparison to a bullet, which can reach out and touch people at multiple miles or kilometers, however you wish to interpret it. And the velocity is so different that the lead time on a crossbow would be astronomical compared to the lead time on a bullet. In short, I'm beginning to wonder if the Inquisition literally has to spend 4 to 6 hours doing exercise and then another 2 hours a day on the range doing crossbow firing.
They probably did. It's probably 4 hours training, 4 hours in the firing range, 4 hours praying, a light meal, and then repentance, and then an hour's sleep.
I don't want to know what's involved with repentance, considering what our next weapon is.
Yes. I thought you'd like this, considering you're a Slaneshi follower. I thought you'd like it like this, but anyway. The Neuro Whip. The Neuro Whip is a power weapon utilised by the Sisters of Battle, in particular the Repentia Mistresses. It's a psychoconductive weapon as well. Yeah. It's a power whip, and very kinky.
A power whip.
A power whip.
I begin to question the chastity of the Sister of Battle if they're going this far into BDSM on their enemies. Would such a weapon be possible? Not only is this possible, it's easier to make than a sword.
What?
Due to the instability of running large electrical currents, i.e. power fields, through solid matter without destabilizing the matter itself, when you have a piece of matter that is flexible in nature and not a stiff, rigid board, it becomes much easier to make a power current stable or even less stable and run it through the whip. Swords having electricity run through them oftentimes overheat. However, even in and I had to go research this, even in modern BDSM practices, it is not uncommon for people who wish to practice electroshock as their form of BDSM to have whips that are electrified to use on their partner.
I'm thinking Slaanesh infiltrated the sororitas somewhere down the line.
I would disagree! The fact of the matter is, not only is this plausible, it would work better than a sword or a fist in terms of physics and mechanics of matter.
Well, there you go. Something you learn every day, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Speaking of swords, however, the Eviscerator. A obscenely oversized chainsaw that is so abnormally large it can only ever be wielded in combat effectively with both hands. And obviously, because this is eventually a massive chainsaw, it's going to have lots of whirling teeth, do tremendous amounts of damage to exposed flesh. But that's not all. Sometimes eviscerated with flamethrowers called exterminators. So not only can you have a massive chainsaw, you can have a chainsaw that's also a flamethrower.
Leave it to the Sisters of Battle to come up with a chainsaw the size of a person it's taller than a person, which is the sick and scary part, that's also on fire!
In fairness, I'm actually pretty sure it was actually the Redemptionists who invented that, if I recall correctly, but they just took it.
Now, let's talk about chainswords and the need for chainswords themselves in Warhammer 40k. We see that in Warhammer 40k, armor protection has quickly outstripped what ranged weapons can actually counter. You literally have squads of Space Marines spraying hundreds of bolter shells into each other and not actually doing any real damage. However, there is a weapon and armor principle called the Degradation of Armor. That is, as armor gets used, it gets less and less reliable, even if it breaks and or deflects the weapon hitting it. Each successive hit, the armor does take some damage, and slowly will not provide as much protection. Now we get the chainsword. A sword of whirling sharp, diamond-edged teeth that fly at over 200 revolutions per minute, being pressed into the armor at full speed, attempting to rip the armor apart. while a couple of teeth from the chainsword might fly off while trying to cut into, say, a space marine or a tank, eventually the chainsword is going to start to grip. And as it grips, it starts to create a groove, and then it starts to create a cut, and then it starts to dig into the target. The longer it is allowed to be pressed into a target, the deeper the gouge it is going to make. The problem with a chainsword, however, is once it's in the target, it's going to be virtually impossible to get out of the target without just chewing the rest of the way through your target. The reason for this is because the teeth themselves are only going to cut enough into what they're slicing into for the teeth to fit. They're not going to slowly cut a wider and wider hull. Which means at a certain point, when the chainsword finally jams because it's just gotten as far into it as it can, it's going to be stuck there until you either find a way to force it to slice the rest of the way through what you're trying to cut, or until you can literally use the jaws of life, as it were, to pry it out of what you've got it dug into. Think of this as going out with your chainsaw to cut down a tree, and the chain snaps and wraps around the tree. Try getting that chain out of that tree. I bet you can't, without some serious tools.
That's why Marbo could.
Furthermore, these chainswords are massive even compared to Scottish claymores and Saxon great axes. Since the wielders of these chainswords don't have power armor, I have to assume that they are hyped up on all sorts of strength-enhancing drugs and implanted cybernetics to even wield these properly. This weapon, without that great strength enhancement, or without just being straight up hopped up on the best form of meth you can find, is not going to be practical for the wielder to use. And generally speaking, the wielder will probably die before they kill anyone.
I do also want to point out as well, at the very least, the Redemptionist version of the Eviscerator, it's not used as actually a chainsaw. It's actually the second handle that's actually on it is positioned like more of a chainsaw. So it's just a giant oversized chainsaw in that version of it.
Right, but
so
even
I'm not sure if that would be easier to use. Obviously, you're not going to do two hands on handle all the weight in one area. You're going to have the weight dispersed more evenly.
You could have the weight dispersed more evenly, but to get a chainsaw, to get just a regular chainsaw of this size, not made of any super dense composites, is going to weigh almost 100 kilograms.
Well, shit.
Swinging something that weighs 100 kilograms as a melee weapon is not going to work. The chainsaw equivalent weighs 98.6 kilograms. This is literally going to be a swing for the fences and hope I hit, unless I have the strength of stupid.
Now, bear in mind the sisters that you tend to use this weapon tend to be pretty much naked. So there's no strength enhancement from power armor or anything like that. That's just pure crazy naked nuns with guns.
So they're pure crazy naked nuns hopped up on drugs and faith. Okay, maybe. At the end of the day, however, the sword is going to be, while it's going to be impossible to block or parry this thing reliably, it's going to be pretty easy to dodge because the sword is, even with a fully trained two-handed wielding swordsman wielding this thing, at best they're going to be able to get half of the sword of a regular sword's speed out of it, which is, in terms of melee combat, is pretty slow. Sorry, Sisters of Battle, your Eviscerator just is not practical to use in any way.
Now, if this was used by the Space Marines, on the other hand, say if it was used by Blood Angel's Death Company, who are already crazy hopped up already and even stronger than regular Space Marines due to their batshit craziness, it could be pretty effective.
Yeah, I imagine that would get pretty effective. And they would be able to swing it at full speed. But considering we're talking the Sisters of Battle, and therefore we're talking regular, non-cybernetically enhanced mutants,
it's just not going to work.
However, now we get into the biggest surprise yet. the melter gun.
Yes. Now, melter guns are essentially portable microwave guns. They work on subatomic agitation of the air, basically explosively vaporizing and evaporating a target's moisture. Now, these things have a very short range due to high power consumption and range dissipation, but anything caught in a blast is likely to be destroyed.
I'm going to be honest, this is completely practical. The best way I can describe a melter gun is it's not a laser beam. It is a chemical-based warhead converted into a high-pressure into a very large pressure washer gun that fires out at such a high pressure and density that it comes out at near the speed of light, and then detonates the gases inside at that pressure to fly out effectively like a shaped charged warhead. I have no idea of any metal that could withstand the temperature or heat. However, this much said, if we could figure out a way to create a barrel to contain that much pressure and use it to fire at a target, what is the equivalent of a chemical-based shaped charged warhead in a straight laser-like line, this would be a gun we would use, without question. It would require less maintenance and ammo than rocket-propelled grenades or light anti-tank weapons. Probably be lighter, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out that someone is working on figuring out a way to take the same death plasma propellant of screw you in a tank heat warhead and turn it into something that someone can spray out that'll still penetrate armor. I have no idea how to I'm going to be honest, I have no idea how to calculate all the forces involved to make this thing work, but I do know that it is literally just taking I'm gonna say this one more time. It is literally just taking the shape charge of a heat warhead, putting it into gun form, and then making the gun spray it out with such high velocity that it doesn't lose shape or armor penetrating capability, since it uses a very highly pressurized pyrium petroleum gas as a two-part injection system to propel the gas into a molecular state. This is not just like some weapon of sci-fi. This is something that could actually be built. As a matter of fact, I would, if you want, go call the Mythbusters and ask, hey, can you build a melter gun?
I'm pretty sure they cancelled Mythbusters, though.
That makes me sad.
Yeah, makes me sad too. I miss the Heinemann's mustache.
So, I do believe that completes our list.
Yep, so we hope you enjoyed this edition of Men at Arms. Next week we're going to be looking at the Orcs, so we've got some nice Xenos tech for you. Albeit incredibly bizarre tech, but interesting nonetheless. So anyway, this has been Remleiz from 40k Theories.